I told him, "Honey, this is the calm version. You should have seen Christmas 2021 when Wesley brought home a girlfriend named Destiny who turned out to be engaged to someone else." There was a full screaming match on the front porch. Destiny left in an Uber eating our leftover pumpkin pie. She took the entire pie, didn't even leave a slice. Patrick stared at me for a beat, then said, "I'm gonna need you to write all of this down because I don't think I'll believe it later." I told him the pie was really good, too. Mom's homemade recipe. Wesley is about 4 months into his sentence now. I visited him once, roughly 6 weeks in. I'm still not sure why I went. Maybe I needed to see him in that environment. Maybe I needed him to see me thriving, living my life without anyone dragging me down. The visitation room at Luzerne County Correctional is exactly as bleak as you'd picture. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor, vending machines stocked with off-brand snacks, fluorescent lights that make everyone look faintly unwell. Wesley was thinner than I'd ever seen him. His hair was cropped short. His eyes held a look I'd never seen before. Not anger, not self-pity, just a kind of blankness. We talked for about 40 minutes. He didn't blame me, didn't ask for money, didn't offer excuses. He just said, "I don't know who I am when nobody's cleaning up after me. I guess I'm figuring it out." I didn't have an answer for that. What do you say? Good luck? I hope you figure it out? I settled on telling him I'd visit again if he wanted. He said he'd like that. I haven't gone back yet. I'm not sure I will. Dad sold Gilmore Heating and Cooling about 6 weeks ago. He couldn't keep it afloat after everything. Lost contracts, legal fees, restitution payments, reputation damage. It all added up. A company from Scranton bought the name and the client list. Dad cleared enough to pay off debts and keep a little, but not much. The man who once bragged about building an empire from his garage now works as an HVAC consultant for a firm in Hazleton. $28 an hour. No employees, no prestige, no Escalade. He drives a 2018 Buick Envision now, bought used from a dealership in Scranton. It's perfectly fine, reliable, practical, exactly the kind of car he used to tease me for driving. The universe has a wicked sense of humor. Dad and I have dinner sometimes. Not often, maybe once a month. He's different now, quieter. He asks about my job and actually listens to the answers. He hasn't apologized directly. I don't think he knows how. But last month he said something that stopped me cold. "You were right to say no that night about the car. You were right." From Gerald Gilmore, that's practically a Hallmark movie confession. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded and changed the subject. Some acknowledgments don't need a reply. Mom got a job, her first in over 30 years. She works the front desk at a dental practice in Kingston 3 days a week, answering phones, scheduling appointments, greeting patients. She's 58 and says it's the best decision she's ever made. Last week, she told Wesley during a phone call from the facility that she couldn't deposit money into his commissary accounts every week anymore. He needed to learn to budget with what he earned from his prison job. He makes about 37 cents an hour in the facility laundry. Mom told him that was more than enough for soap and ramen if he was careful. Baby steps, but steps. Wesley writes me letters sometimes, actual handwritten ones because email isn't a thing in county lockup. His handwriting is awful, like a doctor scribbling during an earthquake, but I can usually decipher it. In his last letter, he said he'd become strategic about commissary purchases. The prison commissary sells ramen for $1.25 a pack. Wesley, who once complained Whole Foods was too basic, now trades work shifts for extra seasoning packets. I'm not saying incarceration rewired his view of money, but he's apparently become very tactical about his soup investments. Never thought I'd see the day. The $2,300 Wesley owed me, about 2 months after sentencing, a check arrived in my mailbox. $2,300 exactly. Memo line, from Wesley's share, Dad. No note, no explanation, no apology. I deposited it without guilt. It was always my money. I'd just been waiting for someone to admit it. Every morning, I drive to work on Route 31, the most direct route from my apartment to the credit union. And every morning I pass the exact spot where Wesley crashed the Escalade. The guardrail has been replaced. Fresh metal, no scratches, no trace of impact. You'd never know anything happened there. But I know. Every single day I drive past in my untouched, beautiful, hard-earned Mazda CX-30, the car Wesley intended to steal that night, the car that survived because I moved it 3 blocks away to protect it from rain, the car that stands for everything I've built without anyone's help. I spent my whole life being told I was too sensitive, too difficult, too rigid with my boundaries. Turns out, I wasn't too anything. I was just surrounded by people who'd never been told no. The moment I stopped being their safety net, reality became their teacher, and reality is a far harsher teacher than I ever was. I didn't destroy my brother. I didn't plot revenge. I didn't scheme or manipulate or orchestrate his downfall. I just stopped protecting him from himself. I held a boundary. I said no, and then I stepped back and let consequences unfold naturally. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for karma. I learned that karma doesn't need your help. It just needs you to get out of the way. My brother is serving 18 months because he couldn't accept the word no. My father lost his business and his pride because he spent 30 years saying yes to the wrong person. And me? I'm exactly where I always should have been, in my own car, on my own road, going exactly where I want to go. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's just a longer fall. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end. If this story resonated with you, there's another one waiting right on your screen. I think you're really going to love it. And remember, your boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. At 7 a.m. the next morning, I called Marcus Trent. "The notarized copy of the Mount Pleasant transfer deed," I said. "The one with the signature that looked wrong. I need to see it today." Marcus didn't ask why. He'd known me long enough to recognize the tone, the quiet shift from concern to calculation. By 9:30 a.m., the documents landed in my encrypted inbox, a clean scan of a transfer deed dated April 12, 2024, conveying my father's family home in Mount Pleasant, valued at $1.2 million, to an entity called Hale Premier Properties, LLC. I'd never heard of it. I was certain my father hadn't either. I opened the South Carolina Secretary of State's business registry. Hale Premier Properties, LLC had been formed in November 2022. Sole member, Victoria R. Hale. No other officers, no other names. Then I did what 12 years of consulting had drilled into me. I compared signatures. I pulled Gerald Beckett's signature from the deed and placed it beside authenticated examples, his will, his medical power of attorney, the birthday card he'd sent me in 2023. The discrepancies jumped out immediately. The capital G in Gerald lacked its familiar loop. Pen pressure was inconsistent, heavy at the beginning, trailing off weakly at the end. Classic signs of someone tracing or simulating rather than writing fluidly. Marcus confirmed what I already suspected. This isn't a bad day at the pen. This is a practiced simulation, but we'll need a certified expert for court weight. He recommended Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. She'd testified in more than 40 federal cases. If Sloan declared the signature forged, no South Carolina court would push back. "There's more," Marcus added. "I found 3 withdrawals from Gerald's IRA totaling $380,000 routed to an account at Coastal Heritage Bank under the name V. Hale. We'll need a subpoena for the complete statements." I stared at the screen. This was no longer family tension. This was felony territory. They arrived at 10 a.m. the next morning, 2 black SUVs loaded to the roof with luggage, decorative pillows, and what looked like an entire monogrammed linen collection. Victoria stepped out first, designer sunglasses perched atop platinum hair, surveying the property the way someone eyes a fixer-upper. Not bad for a starter home. A starter home, 4,200 square feet, $4.8 million market value. She walked directly to the master bedroom as though she'd already studied the floor plan. Within an hour, my clothes were stacked in the hallway, and her garment bags filled my closet. Paige claimed the ocean view room. I was assigned the smallest first-floor bedroom, the one originally designed as linen storage in my own house. My father trailed behind them, carrying a single duffel, looking like a man who'd been bundled into the wrong vehicle. In the hallway, he caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I gave a slight headshake. Not yet. That evening, Victoria summoned 3 couples from her social orbit for an impromptu dinner, using groceries I'd purchased. She paraded them through every room, gesturing grandly across the open kitchen like a game show host. Gerald wanted a beach house, so I made it happen. Not one person at the table knew I still owned the house. Not one asked. I washed the dishes. I smiled. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email from Marcus. Patricia Sloan had finished her preliminary review. Finding: the signature on the April 12th transfer deed was a highly likely simulation forgery. I dried the last plate, placed it on the shelf, and retreated to my tiny room. At 11 p.m., when the house fell quiet, a second email arrived. Subject: "Call me first thing tomorrow. This is bigger than we thought." I waited until 6:45 a.m., slipped out the back door, and walked down to the beach. The tide was low, the sand still dark and damp. From the waterline, where the waves would mask my voice, I called Marcus. "The IRA withdrawals were only the beginning," Marcus said. She opened a supplementary credit card under Gerald's name, his SSN, his credit history, her as authorized user. Current balance $47,000. Charges include a luxury spa retreat in Hilton Head, 2 Channel handbags, a first-class flight to New York, none of which Gerald authorized or remembers. I closed my eyes. The ocean thundered in front of me. "And there's a third account," Marcus continued, "a savings account titled V. Hale Trust at the same bank, $215,000. Source: transfers from their joint household account labeled as household expenses." I did the math standing there with salt water seeping into my sneakers. Mount Pleasant House, $1.2 million. IRA, $380,000, credit card $47,000, trust account $215,000. Total, roughly $1.842 million siphoned from my father without his knowledge while he recovered from a mild heart attack and trusted his wife to handle the finances. That same afternoon, Patricia Sloan filed her official report, PS 25008. Conclusion: the signature on the April 12th transfer deed was a simulated forgery, assessed at the highest probability level recognized in the discipline. Marcus laid it out plainly. We're looking at forgery in the first degree and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, both felonies under South Carolina Code. What do you want to do? If I reported now, Victoria would be arrested, Gerald would be blindsided, the whole city would know by dinner. Marcus caused. There's another path. The Low Country Bar Association's annual charity gala is June 14th. Victoria is being honored, Philanthropist of the Year. If any of that money flowed into the foundation, the award rests on fraud. He let the implication settle. You want to end this in a police station or on the stage she built for herself? I knew the answer before he finished. 84 days, from March 23rd to June 14th. That night, I broke the plan into 3 phases. Phase 1, March through April, assemble every piece of evidence into a file strong enough to survive a judge, a journalist, or a room full of attorneys. Phase 2, May, protect my father, shift financial oversight to an independent fiduciary, stabilize his health, prepare him for the truth. Phase 3, first 2 weeks of June, orchestrate the reveal at the single event Victoria valued above everything else. Marcus filed the subpoena request with Charleston County Court on March 28th. Estimated turnaround, 45 days. Patricia Sloan was already preparing her full forensic comparison. The pieces were in motion, but I needed one more ally, someone whose credibility Victoria couldn't discredit and whose platform would outlive a single evening. I called Della Fairchild. Della was 52, senior editor at the Charleston Society Review, the magazine that chronicled every gala, fundraiser, and garden party in low country high society. More importantly, she'd been my mother's college roommate. They stayed close until the end. Della was one of the last people to visit my mother in hospice. When I explained what I'd uncovered, the line went silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I've had doubts about Victoria for years. She donates generously but never lets anyone near the books. Every time I pitched an audit story, my publisher killed it. Too many advertisers in her circle." Della agreed to attend the gala as credentialed press. If the evidence held, she would publish a full investigative piece in the Charleston Society Review, a publication read by 85,000 low-country elites. "One condition," she said, "every document gets independently verified before I write a single word." I wouldn't have had it any other way. Living with Victoria in the beach house those weeks felt like sharing a cage with someone who didn't realize the lock was already broken. April arrived, and so did her permanence. She changed the locks on the master bedroom, my master bedroom, without discussion. She hired a decorator to redo the living room in what she called coastal chic: new throw pillows, a driftwood coffee table, a $6,000 linen sectional. The $12,000 invoice arrived in my mailbox with a sticky note: "Bonnie, take care of this, XO, V." I paid it. I needed her comfortable. I needed her careless. Every Friday, she hosted what she called sunset socials. 5 or 6 couples from her Charleston circle would arrive, sipping my wine on my porch while Victoria narrated her life as if she'd built it single-handedly from nothing. I overheard her tell a woman in a cashmere wrap, "Bonnie's going through a phase. Quit her little job, living off savings. We're here to keep an eye on her, really." The woman glanced at me with pity. I refilled her glass without a word. One evening, my father pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Victoria says you've been stressed, that you're not handling the career change well." "I'm fine, Dad. Better than fine." He studied my face, but didn't press. Gerald Beckett had spent 63 years trusting the wrong people to tell him the truth about the ones he loved. One afternoon, while Victoria was at a spa appointment, I picked up the iPad she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her browser history was still open. The most recent search? "How to add name to property deed, South Carolina." She wasn't just visiting. She was planning to put her name on my house. That evening, Marcus called. "Subpoena's been approved. Bank statements in 2 weeks." He hesitated. "But, Bonnie, there's another account we haven't seen yet." The Coastal Heritage bank statements arrived at Marcus's office on the first Monday of May, sealed in a courier envelope marked "Confidential," court order enclosed. He called me at noon. I sat in my car in the Sullivan's Island public parking lot, the only place I could be certain Victoria wouldn't overhear. "The V. Hale account matches what we expected," Marcus said. $380,000 from Gerald's IRA, deposited in 4 installments between January and October 2024. We already knew about the credit card, $47,000. "You said there was another one." "There is. A savings account titled V. Hale Trust. Balance as of last month, $215,000. All of it transferred from the joint household checking account Gerald shares with Victoria. Each withdrawal labeled as household expenses, groceries, maintenance, utilities, but it all flowed into this separate account." I stared through the windshield at the marsh grass bending in the wind. Total damage? $1.2 million for the house, $380,000 from the IRA, $47,000 on the card, $215,000 in the trust. Grand total? Approximately $1.842 million. He let the number hang between us. "Marcus, if I tell my father now, he'll confront her. He won't be able to help it, and that could derail the gala plan, or worse, his heart." "I know, but he needs to hear it before that night. He needs to stand on that stage knowing the full truth, and he needs to sign an affidavit confirming he never authorized any of it." We settled on June 1st, 13 days before the gala. Early enough for Gerald to prepare, late enough that Victoria wouldn't have time to spin a counter-narrative. That same week, Patricia Sloan sent an addendum to her report. The handwriting in the forged signature on the Mount Pleasant deed was consistent with the handwriting on the fraudulent credit card application. Same person, same pen habits, same crime. June 1st was a Sunday. I woke before dawn and watched the sky shift from charcoal to pale gold through my tiny first-floor window. Victoria wouldn't rise until 9 a.m. She never did on weekends. I had a narrow window. I found my father on the porch at 5:45 a.m., sitting with a cup of coffee he'd made himself, watching pelicans glide over the breakers. "Walk with me," I said. We took the boardwalk down to the beach. The sand was cool under our feet. I waited until we were far enough from the house that even shouting wouldn't carry. Then I opened the folder. I showed him the transfer deed, the forensic report, the bank statements for all 3 accounts. I showed him the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, filed under his wife's maiden name. I laid it out the way I'd present to a client: facts first, implications second, questions last. Gerald read every page. His hands trembled. A vein in his temple throbbed for 3 full minutes. Neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ocean pulling at the shore. "I didn't sign this," he said, finally, voice barely above the waves. "I've never heard of this company. I've never authorized any of these transfers." He pressed his palms against his eyes. When he lowered them, they were red. "I'm sorry, Bonnie. God, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." "You didn't know, Dad. She made sure you didn't know." Gerald agreed to everything: the affidavit, the gala, the silence until June 14th. Marcus notarized his sworn statement 2 days later at his downtown office, with a certified witness present. As we walked back to the house that morning, my father stopped at the bottom of the boardwalk stairs. He pulled me into a hug, the first in 8 years, and whispered so quietly I almost missed it, "Your mother would be proud." I didn't know that my mother's voice would reach me one more time before this was over, in a way I never could have predicted. 13 days. Victoria spent every one preparing for the night she believed would crown her legacy. She hired a personal stylist, $3,500 for a single consultation. She ordered a custom champagne-colored gown from a boutique on King Street, $8,200, fitted twice, hemmed to the millimeter. Every evening after dinner, she stood before the master bedroom mirror and rehearsed her acceptance speech, gesturing to an invisible audience with the practiced grace of someone who'd been performing generosity her entire life. On June 8th, she told me I was expected at the gala for appearances. "You'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." Then she paused and added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course, Victoria. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Marcus finalized the evidence file: Gerald's affidavit, Patricia Sloan's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, and a printout of Victoria's browser search history recovered from the household iPad. All originals, all verified, sealed in a manila envelope. On June 10th, Marcus met with Judge Raymond Holt, president of the Low Country Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. Marcus presented the file. Judge Holt reviewed it for 45 minutes in his chambers, asked 3 clarifying questions, then removed his reading glasses. "This is deeply serious," he said. "Under Section 7.3 of our association bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct must be addressed before an honor is conferred. I'll make the arrangements." Victoria didn't know. She was too busy deciding between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 11th, she told me I was expected at the gala for appearances. "You'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." Then she paused and added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course, Victoria. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Marcus finalized the evidence file, Gerald's affidavit, Patricia Sloane's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, and a printout of Victoria's browser search history recovered from the household iPad. All originals, all verified, sealed in a manila envelope. On June 10th, Marcus met with Judge Raymond Holt, president of the Low Country Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. Marcus presented the file. Judge Holt reviewed it for 45 minutes in his chambers, asked 3 clarifying questions, then removed his reading glasses. "This is deeply serious," he said. "Under Section 7.3 of our association bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct must be addressed before an honor is conferred. I'll make the arrangements." Victoria didn't know. She was too busy deciding between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 11th, she told me I was expected at the gala for appearances. "You'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." Then she paused and added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course, Victoria. I wouldn't dream of stealing your spotlight." Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Marcus finalized the evidence file, Gerald's affidavit, Patricia Sloane's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, and a printout of Victoria's browser search history recovered from the household iPad. All originals, all verified, sealed in a manila envelope. On June 10th, Marcus met with Judge Raymond Holt, president of the Low Country Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. Marcus presented the file. Judge Holt reviewed it for 45 minutes in his chambers, asked 3 clarifying questions, then removed his reading glasses. "This is deeply serious," he said. "Under Section 7.3 of our association bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct must be addressed before an honor is conferred. I'll make the arrangements." Victoria didn't know. She was too busy deciding between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 11th, she told me I was expected at the gala for appearances. "You'll sit in the back, obviously, but I need the family there. It looks better for the photos." Then she paused and added, "Wear something simple. This isn't." After Richard discovered that Victoria had quietly transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal savings account she'd opened under her maiden name, he didn't press charges. Helen said he wanted a clean divorce, wanted to forget. She respected that choice for 16 years. But then she saw my name in a blog post by Della Fairchild, something about women in Charleston consulting, and recognized me as Gerald Beckett's daughter. She looked at me steadily. "Victoria has a pattern, Bonnie. She finds men who are successful but trusting, takes control of the finances, and bleeds them dry. Your father is not her first victim." Helen handed me a manila folder, a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs versus Hale, 2009, with the phrase "dissipation of marital assets" highlighted in yellow. 2 husbands, 2 sets of stolen funds, the same playbook, 16 years apart. "I stayed quiet because I was ashamed," Helen said. "If I can help your father, I will." I thanked her and called Marcus before I even reached my car. The night of June 13th settled over the beach house like a held breath. Victoria was in the master bedroom rehearsing her speech one last time. Through the door, I could hear the cadence of her voice, rising, falling, grateful, humble, rehearsed to perfection. In the next room, Paige arranged jewelry on the dresser, holding up earrings to her reflection, completely unaware that by tomorrow night, every piece of the life her mother had constructed would be scattered across a ballroom floor. My father knocked on my door at 10. His face was drawn, but his eyes were steady, the eyes of a man who had finally stopped looking away. He held a small wooden box, walnut with a tarnished brass clasp. He said, "I found this," quietly, in the locked drawer of Victoria's nightstand. "She was at the spa this afternoon. I wasn't looking for it. I was looking for my reading glasses. He opened the box. Inside were 2 handwritten pages folded once. The paper yellowed at the edges. My mother's handwriting, I knew it instantly. The looping lowercase y, the way she crossed her T's with a slight upward slant, as if every word was reaching for something better. The letter was dated 3 days before she died. Bonnie, my brave girl, you don't need anyone's permission to live your life. You are enough. You have always been enough. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that. Victoria had kept this letter hidden for 17 years, my mother's last words to me, sealed in a box, locked in a drawer, in the bedroom of the woman who had spent a decade and a half telling me I was nothing. My father and I sat together in my small room and cried, without speaking. When I could breathe again, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse, the one I'd carry tomorrow. I won't let her down, Dad. Before I turned off the light, I passed the hallway that led to the porch. Victoria's silhouette was framed against the moonlit ocean, phone pressed to her ear. I stopped. Her voice drifted through the screen door. Don't worry. After the gala, I'll have them transfer the deed. She won't even notice until it's done. She was talking about my house, the house I'd bought with 12 years of invisible labor, and she was planning to take it the moment her trophy was in hand. I went to bed. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., and for the first time in 84 days, I slept soundly. June 14th, 2025. The morning arrived bright and still, the kind of low-humidity Charleston day that makes everything look sharper than it has any right to be. At 8 a.m., I was in Marcus Trent's office, a glass-walled suite on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse on East Bay Street. The manila envelope sat between us on his desk, like a loaded weapon laid flat. We reviewed the contents one final time. The forged transfer deed with Patricia Sloan's forensic report, PS 25008, the Coastal Heritage bank statements for all 3 accounts, Gerald's notarized affidavit signed and witnessed on June 3rd, the Hale Premier Properties LLC registration, the divorce decree from Briggs v. Hale 2009, a screenshot of Victoria's browser history, the search for How to Add Name to Property Deed South Carolina, timestamped, device identified, saved to PDF. Marcus said, Helen Briggs confirmed this morning. She purchased a ticket through Della's table, 12. She's ready. At 10, Marcus met Judge Holt at the courthouse for a final briefing. The judge had already informed the gala organizing committee the Philanthropist of the Year award would be paused before presentation, pending a matter related to the nominee that required the association's attention. The committee agreed, reluctantly but unanimously. No one in Charleston's legal elite wanted their signature award tainted by unexamined fraud. Victoria, meanwhile, spent the morning in radiant oblivion. She emerged from the master bedroom at 2 in her champagne gown, hair swept into high shine, diamond pendant catching the light. She surveyed me in my simple black dress and pearl earrings the way a queen surveys a chamberlain. Don't worry, Victoria. Tonight, everyone will know exactly where I belong. She frowned, a brief crease between perfectly filled brows, but she was already checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She had bigger things on her mind, so she thought. The grand ballroom of the Belmont Charleston Place was the kind of room designed to make ordinary people feel extraordinary, and extraordinary people feel immortal. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, floor-to-ceiling windows draped in ivory silk, round tables set with bone china and silver flatware, each anchored by a centerpiece of white peonies and flickering votives. 220 guests, attorneys, circuit court judges, state legislators, nonprofit founders, and the social columnists who chronicled their every handshake. Black tie, impeccable manners. In a room like this, reputation wasn't just currency, it was oxygen. Victoria moved through the crowd as though the evening had been choreographed around her. She kissed cheeks, clasped hands, leaned in to whisper things that made powerful people laugh. At one point, I watched her rest her palm on Judge Holt's forearm and say with the sincerity only a lifetime of practice can produce, "I'm so humbled by this honor, Raymond, truly." She sat at table 1, the VIP position, directly before the stage. Gerald was beside her, posture rigid, water glass untouched. He hadn't looked at Victoria since they arrived. She hadn't noticed. I was at table 18, near the service entrance, the table Victoria had assigned me. Marcus sat to my left, briefcase tucked beneath his chair. At table 12, I could see Helen Briggs, silver hair, linen blazer, watching the room with the patience of someone who'd waited 16 years for this evening. In the press section, Della Fairchild adjusted her recorder and opened a fresh page. At 8:30, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the evening's awards presentation, the association has a brief announcement." Victoria straightened in her chair. She smoothed her gown. She smiled, the generous, camera-ready smile she'd been rehearsing in mirrors for weeks. Then, Judge Holt rose from his seat, walked to the podium, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have received information requiring our attention before we proceed this evening." 220 pairs of eyes turned to the stage. Victoria's smile didn't falter. Not yet, but I saw her fingers tighten around her napkin. Judge Holt's voice carried through the ballroom with the measured gravity of a man who had spent 30 years on the bench. Under Section 7.3 of the Low Country Bar Association's bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be addressed before an honor is conferred. This evening, we have received a formally documented complaint supported by forensic evidence, sworn testimony, and independently verified financial records. He paused. The complaint was filed by a member of the nominee's own family. A murmur rippled through the tables, the quiet, involuntary sound of 220 people recalibrating their expectations in unison. Victoria was on her feet before Judge Holt finished. "This is absurd," she said, her voice pitched perfectly between outrage and bewilderment, the voice of a woman who'd spent decades commanding rooms. "Raymond, who filed this? This is a charity event, not a courtroom." Judge Holt looked directly at me. "Miss Bonnie Beckett, you've been invited to present your evidence." The murmur became a wave. Heads turned. Victoria's eyes locked onto me at table 18, the back of the room, exactly where she'd placed me. For one long, suspended second, we stared at each other across 17 tables, 220 witnesses, and 15 years of silence. I stood. I picked up the manila envelope and walked. 17 tables, each step deliberate, each step audible on the polished hardwood. I felt the weight of every gaze, heard the rustle of evening gowns as women turned in their chairs, the clink of a water glass. Someone sat down too hard. Gerald. Victoria's voice cracked the silence like a struck match. "Do something. She's trying to ruin me." My father sat still. His hands were folded on the table. He did not look at his wife. I stepped onto the stage. 220 faces stared up at me. The chandelier light was warm and merciless. I set the envelope on the podium, leaned into the microphone, and took one long breath. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," I said. "I came here because the truth couldn't wait one more day." I opened the envelope and removed the first document. On April 12, 2024, a transfer deed was filed in Charleston County conveying ownership of the Beckett family home in Mount Pleasant, assessed value $1.2 million, to a limited liability company called Hale Premier Properties. I held the deed up. The projection screen behind me lit with a high-resolution scan, the county seal, the legal description, and at the bottom, a signature reading Gerald A. Beckett. This signature is not my father's. I advanced to the next slide, a side-by-side comparison. Left, the deed signature. Right, Gerald's authentic signature from his will, his medical power of attorney, and a notarized affidavit signed on June 3rd of this year. The differences were visible even from the back row. The missing loop on the capital G, the inconsistent pen pressure, the mechanical quality of a hand copying rather than writing. This analysis was conducted by Patricia Sloan, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, with testimony in over 40 federal proceedings. Her conclusion, stated in Report PS 250087, the signature is a simulated forgery at the highest probability level recognized in the field. The ballroom fell into the kind of silence that isn't polite, it's airless, the silence of a room that has collectively stopped breathing. My father rose from table 1. His voice was hoarse but clear. I did not sign that document. I did not know that company existed, and I did not authorize the transfer of my home. Victoria gripped the edge of the table. Gerald, tell them you signed it. Tell them! He looked at her for the first time that evening. Then he slowly shook his head. Somewhere at table 5, a man set his fork down on his plate. The tiny clink rang out like a gavel. I pulled the second set of documents from the envelope. Between January and October 2024, 4 withdrawals totaling $380,000 were made from Gerald Individual Retirement Account and deposited into a savings account at Coastal Heritage Bank. The next slide appeared redacted bank statements with routing numbers, dates, and amounts highlighted. The account is registered under the name V. Hale. I heard a chair scrape. Someone at table 9 whispered to the person beside them. Additionally, a supplementary credit card was opened using Gerald Beckett's Social Security number without his knowledge or consent. Current balance, $47,000. Charges include luxury travel, designer purchases, and personal spa treatments, none of which appear in Gerald's personal records. The third slide, a separate savings account titled V. Hale Trust, holding $215,000, transferred from the Beckett's joint household checking account and disguised as routine household expenses. I set the statements on the podium. The total amount diverted from my father's assets without his knowledge or authorization is approximately $1.842 million. Under South Carolina Code Section 43-35-10, the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, my father is 63 years old with a documented cardiac history, this is a felony. Victoria turned to the room. The tears came immediately, glistening, perfectly timed, rolling down cheeks that hadn't creased with genuine emotion in years. "She's lying," she said, voice breaking with practiced fragility. "Gerald gave me access to everything. This is a family misunderstanding, not a criminal matter. How dare you turn a charity dinner into a public trial?" Judge Holt spoke from his seat, voice level as a plumb line. "Ms. Hale Beckett, the evidence has been independently verified. The association is revoking the Philanthropist of the Year award immediately." Victoria's mouth opened. No sound came out. Then, from table 12, a woman stood. Helen Briggs rose with the quiet composure of someone who'd spent 16 years rehearsing this moment in her mind. "My name is Helen Briggs." Her voice carried across the ballroom with the clarity of someone who has decided to finally stop whispering. "My name is Helen Briggs. Victoria Hale was previously married to my ex-husband, Richard Briggs, a dentist in Savannah. They married in 2005. The marriage ended in 2009 after Richard discovered that Victoria had transferred $190,000 from their joint accounts into a personal account under her maiden name." She held up a bound document. "This is a certified copy of the divorce decree, Briggs v. Hale, Chatham County Superior Court, 2009. The ruling specifically cites dissipation of marital assets." She passed the decree to Judge Holt, who accepted it without a word. The murmur that had been building broke like a wave. 220 people began talking at once, at first in whispers, then in full voices. I saw a woman at table 7 cover her mouth. 2 attorneys at table 3 leaned toward each other with the look of professionals who have just realized they were standing next to a bomb. Victoria stood frozen between the VIP table and the aisle, her champagne gown catching the chandelier light long after the door closed behind her. No one followed. For a few seconds after the door closed, the ballroom held its breath. Then Judge Holt returned to the podium. The Philanthropist of the Year Award for 2025 will not be conferred this evening. The Low Country Bar Association will initiate a full audit of all donations received through the Hale Beckett Foundation. We ask for your patience and discretion as this matter proceeds through the appropriate legal channels. He stepped back from the microphone. The room exhaled. What happened next I did not expect. A man at table 3, tall, silver-tempered, with the bearing of someone who owned the building he worked in, stood and crossed the ballroom toward me. Douglas Rain, founding partner of Rain & Partners, one of the most respected litigation firms in the Carolinas. He shook my hand. You presented that more clearly than half the attorneys I've hired in 20 years. Douglas Wren pressed his card into my palm. If your father needs legal representation for the divorce or the criminal referral, here's my card. Pro bono. Behind him, Della Fairchild caught my eye from the press section. She gave a single, decisive nod, the kind that says, I have everything I need. I returned to the microphone one final time. The room quieted again. I didn't come here tonight to tear someone down, I said. I came because my father deserved to know the truth, because silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender, and because no one in this room or anywhere else should have to trade their dignity for the appearance of family harmony. The applause started at table 12. Helen Briggs, steady, certain. It spread outward, not thunderous, not jubilant, but deliberate, the sound of 220 people offering something rarer than praise. Respect. My father took my arm as we descended the stage steps. His grip was firm, his eyes clear, and for the first time in 15 years, we walked out of a room together. The drive back to Sullivan's Island took 23 minutes. My father sat in the passenger seat and didn't speak for the first 20. Then somewhere on the bridge over the Intercoastal Waterway, with the marsh stretching black and endless on either side, he said, I'll file for divorce Monday. I didn't argue, I didn't comfort, I just reached over and squeezed his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Victoria's things were still there, the garment bags, the monogrammed towels, the decorative pillows she'd chosen for my living room. But she was gone. She'd apparently taken an Uber from the hotel. Where she went, I didn't know. I didn't look. Gerald's phone buzzed 14 times between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. I know because I could hear it vibrating through the guest room wall. He showed me the messages the next morning. Gerald, please, I can explain. Don't do this to our family. Then you're making a mistake. Then this is all Bonnie's fault. She manipulated you. And the last one, at 1:47 a.m., you'll regret this. Paige called me at 11:30 that night. She was crying, the ugly, raw kind that strips away every performance. Why did you do this? She's my mother. I know she is, I said, and I'm sorry you're in pain, but she stole nearly $2 million from my father, Paige. She forged his name. She was planning to take my house next. I didn't have another option. The line went quiet, then very softly, I know. After we hung up, I sat on the porch in the dark. The ocean was louder at night, or maybe I was finally quiet enough to hear it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, the way you feel when something that's been growing inside you for years is finally removed. It hurts, but you're lighter. Gerald came out and sat in the chair beside me. He placed my mother's letter on the armrest between us. Keep it, he said. It was always yours. Victoria's final message, you'll regret this, wasn't an empty threat. It was a press release. By 9 a.m. on June 15th, the Low Country Daily Buzz, a local tabloid site with about 40,000 followers, ran the headline that made my stomach clench. Local philanthropist claims stepdaughter orchestrated public humiliation at charity gala. The article was built almost entirely on Victoria's interview. Tears, trembling voice, the full performance. She called me troubled. She called the gala reveal a vindictive ambush by a jealous stepdaughter who never accepted her. She said Gerald was confused and manipulated. The comment section split immediately. A disturbing number believed her. That poor woman was blindsided. No family business should be aired in public. Bonnie Beckett should be ashamed. I sat at the kitchen counter reading those words and felt a familiar ache. The people-pleasing instinct rising up, whispering that maybe I'd gone too far, maybe I should have handled it privately, maybe I should apologize. I called Marcus. He didn't let me finish the sentence. Don't respond, don't post, don't call anyone. Della's piece goes live tonight. The facts will do the work. 2 hate emails arrived that afternoon from women in Victoria's social circle, both of whom had been dinner guests at my own table, drinking my wine. One wrote, "You should be ashamed of yourself. Victoria has given more to this community than you ever will." The other simply said, "Karma is real, Bonnie." I thought about that word, karma. I thought about Victoria forging my father's name, draining his retirement, hiding my mother's last letter in a locked drawer for 17 years, and still managing to make half the internet feel sorry for her. I wondered, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you did the right thing, but the world made you feel like a villain for it? If you have, tell me in the comments, because that afternoon I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Then at 6 p.m., my phone lit up with a push notification from the Charleston Society Review. Breaking, full evidence of financial fraud by Victoria Hale Beckett. Sources confirmed. Della kept her word. Della Fairchild's article was 3,200 words of surgical journalism. No speculation, no adjectives, just evidence stacked like bricks. She published the forged deed alongside Patricia Sloan's forensic analysis. She printed the bank statements with routing numbers redacted, but amounts and account names intact. She quoted Judge Holt on the record. The evidence presented was sufficient to warrant immediate revocation of the award and referral to appropriate authorities. She included a full timeline, the LLC registration in 2022, the IRA withdrawals through 2024, the unauthorized credit card, and she laid the Briggs divorce decree belicit like a mirror. The headline alone was devastating. The philanthropist who stole, inside Victoria Hale Beckett's double life. Within 12 hours, the article hit 127,000 views, 4,800 shares, 1,200 comments. The top-rated one, from a reader in Somerville, read, "That poor woman had a pattern. Gerald Beckett is lucky his daughter saved him." The Low Country Daily Buzz, the same outlet that ran Victoria's cheery interview that morning, published a retraction by midnight. We apologize for our earlier one-sided reporting and encourage readers to review the full evidence published by the Charleston Society Review. The Low Country Bar Association released a formal statement the following morning. The 2025 Philanthropist of the Year Award has been permanently rescinded. The Hale Beckett Foundation's partnership status has been suspended pending a comprehensive financial audit. Within 48 hours, 3 of the foundation's largest corporate sponsors, a regional bank, a luxury car dealership, and a hospitality group, withdrew their pledges. Combined value, $420,000. Victoria's publicist released a 2-sentence statement on her behalf. Mrs. Hale Beckett categorically denies all allegations and looks forward to clearing her name through the legal process. No one quoted it. The news cycle had already moved on, but not in the direction Victoria wanted. On Monday, June 16th, my father walked into Charleston County Family Court at 9:15 a.m. wearing a navy suit and the expression of a man who had just woken up after a very long sleep. He filed for divorce on grounds of fraud upon the marriage and dissipation of marital assets. The petition was 14 pages long, prepared by Marcus Trent over the preceding 2 weeks, and cited every document, every account, and every forged signature we'd uncovered. That same afternoon, Marcus drove to the Charleston Sheriff's Office and filed a formal criminal complaint. The charges he recommended were precise: forgery in the first degree, South Carolina Code 16-13-100; exploitation of a vulnerable adult, 43-35-100; identity fraud for the unauthorized credit card, each one a felony, each one carrying potential prison time measured in years, not months. The sheriff's office opened an investigation immediately. Victoria was instructed to present herself within 72 hours. By Wednesday, she hired Nathan Pratt, a well-known Charleston criminal defense attorney. Pratt's first move was a phone call to Marcus, proposing a settlement. Return the money, close the accounts, drop the charges, and everyone walks away quietly. Marcus relayed the offer. I didn't need 30 seconds. No settlement, I said. My father is entitled to the full protection of the law, not a handshake in a conference room. By the end of that week, Coastal Heritage Bank had frozen both the V. Hale savings account and the V. Hale Trust, a combined $595,000, locked until the investigation concluded. Paige called me that Thursday, her second call since the gala. Her voice was calmer this time, quieter. Can we talk, not as enemies? I never thought of you as my enemy, Paige, but you need to decide where you stand. I can't do that for you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know. The final number arrived on July 2nd. The Low Country Bar Association's emergency audit of the Hale Beckett Foundation uncovered what Marcus had suspected from the beginning. The rot went deeper than the personal accounts. $85,000 in charitable donations had been reclassified through a series of internal transfers and quietly redirected toward Victoria's personal expenses. Event planning invoices that turned out to be catering for her private dinner parties, administrative costs that precisely matched her monthly spa membership, and a $10,000 consulting fee paid to Hale Premier Properties LLC, the same shell company used to steal my father's house. The revised total? $1.92 million. On that same day, the Charleston County Grand Jury returned a formal indictment, 4 felony counts: forgery in the first degree, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity fraud, and misappropriation of charitable funds. Victoria surrendered herself at the county courthouse, posted $75,000 bail, and was released with a GPS ankle monitor and a court order prohibiting contact with Gerald Beckett. The restraining order was granted that same afternoon, 200 feet, no exceptions. Della Fairchild published a follow-up. The Post and Courier, South Carolina's largest daily newspaper, picked up the story. So did the Charleston City Paper. Conservative estimates placed the combined readership at over 500,000. On social media, #HaleBeckettFraud trended regionally for 3 days. Victoria's name, once synonymous with charity luncheons and society page features, now returned only one kind of search result. Her defense attorney, Nathan Pratt, floated the idea of a countersuit, defamation, against me. Marcus's response was a single sentence in an email. Every statement made at the gala was supported by independently verified evidence reviewed in advance by a sitting judge. We welcomed the discovery process. The countersuit was never filed. In the first week of July, after the indictment, the restraining order, and the newspaper headlines had all settled into a kind of exhausted stillness, I sat down with my father on the porch of the beach house. The same porch, the same chairs, but nothing else was the same. Dad, I said, I love you. I need you to hear that first, because what I'm about to say might not sound like love, but it is. He nodded. He was listening, really listening, maybe for the first time in years. I'm not going back to being the version of me that made everyone comfortable. I spent 15 years being the quiet one, the accommodating one, the daughter who never complained because she didn't want to make trouble. That's over. If we're going to have a relationship, a real one, it has to be built on honesty. You tell me the truth, I tell you the truth, and neither of us lets anyone else rewrite the story." His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I'm going to start seeing someone, a therapist. I need to understand how I let this happen, how I let someone stand between me and my own daughter for 15 years without seeing it. That's all I'm asking." That evening, I wrote an email to Paige. I kept it short and clear. "I don't hate you. I never did. But I need you to understand that what your mother did was criminal, not a misunderstanding, not a family squabble. If you want to build something real between us, it starts with acknowledging that. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to choose honesty." I also made a phone call I'd been postponing to Dr. Elaine Marsh, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in family trauma. My first appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Setting boundaries, it turns out, isn't a single dramatic moment on a stage. It's a series of quiet decisions made in ordinary rooms. And the hardest boundary to enforce is the one you set with yourself. The letter arrived in mid-July. Not an email, not a text, but 3 handwritten pages in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. I recognized Paige's handwriting immediately. She still dotted her I's with tiny circles, the way she had when she was 14 and I was 21, and we had, briefly, before Victoria made it clear that closeness between us was unacceptable, been something like friends. She wrote, "Bonnie, I've been crying for 3 weeks. Not because my mother was arrested, but because I finally realized what I've known for 15 years and refused to say out loud. I watched her treat you like you didn't exist. I watched her take your bedroom, your holidays, your place in family photos. I watched her call you the leftover at a dinner party, and I laughed along because it was easier to defend you. I was comfortable, and comfort made me complicit. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I haven't done that. I'm writing because you deserve to hear someone in this family say, 'I saw it. It was wrong, and I did nothing.' I've started seeing a therapist. I want to be someone who tells the truth, even when it costs me something. If you're willing, I'd like to try to know you, not as stepsisters who tolerate each other, but as 2 adults who choose honesty over convenience." I read the letter twice. The second time, I cried. She had also included something I hadn't expected, a confession. Victoria had told Paige years ago that I'd received a large inheritance from my mother and refused to share it with the family. That's why she doesn't come to holidays. She thinks she's better than us. It was, of course, completely fabricated. My mother left no money. She left a letter, and even that had been stolen. I wrote back, "I appreciate your courage, Paige. Let's start slow." We met at a coffee shop on King Street at the end of July. We talked for 3 hours. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't polished, but it was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with anyone who shared my last name. December 2025, 6 months later, I'm sitting on the porch of the Sullivan's Island house, the same spot where this whole story began, with a glass of wine and a phone call at 11:47 p.m. The waves sound the same, the salt air tastes the same, but I am not the same woman who sat here in March. My father lives in the guest cottage now, 50 steps from the main house. He finalized his divorce in October. The settlement restored every stolen dollar to his accounts, or at least the dollars that could be recovered. He sees his therapist every Thursday. His cardiologist says his numbers are better than they've been in 3 years. Last Tuesday, he made dinner for the 2 of us, the first time he'd cooked since my mother was alive. It was terrible. I ate every bite. I went back to work, but not to Meridian. I founded Beckett Advisory Group, a solo strategic consulting practice based out of a small office on East Bay Street. My first 3 clients included Douglas Wren's firm, the man who shook my hand at the gala and offered his card. Revenue in the first quarter exceeded my projections by 14%. Victoria's trial is scheduled for March 2026. 4 felony counts. If convicted, she faces 5 to 15 years. I don't think about it as much as I used to. Paige visits the island once a month. We're not close, not yet, but we're honest, and that's worth more. Della Fairchild's follow-up article, Bonnie Beckett, the woman who chose truth over silence, was republished by Forbes Women's Fall Voices column. I didn't read it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I read it beside my mother's letter. The last line my mother ever wrote to me was this: "You are enough, always." Every morning I open that letter. Every morning I sit on this porch and once be Atlantic stretch out towards the horizon. And every morning I know something I didn't know a year ago. I'm here because I chose to be, not because someone permitted it, not because I earned the right by silence, because I am enough. I always was. If you stayed until the end of the story, thank you, truly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the moment you stopped shrinking so someone else could feel tall. If you're in a relationship, family, work, anywhere, where you've been making yourself smaller, I hope you heard something tonight that reminded you, your boundaries are not selfish, they are survival. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this one and check the description. There's another story there that I think you'll see yourself in. I'll see you in the next one.